Hello everyone, BoarControl back again. Today we'll be looking at some of the newest cards revealed. Today is the 25th, so we're looking at cards from the 24th and the 25th today. A lot of newer cards revealed each and every day. So excited to look at them. Some really spectacular cards, especially released recently. I did miss this card from the last video. The Ball Acolyte. 4 mana 2/6 taunt. Okay stats. Spell Burst. Gain control of a random enemy minion with 2 or less attack. Just a reminder, the Spell Burst here, a one-time effect after you cast a spell. So you play this, and you play it with a cheap spell, and you control the enemy minion, a bit like Cabal Shadow Priest. So you need to have cheap spells in your deck for this to work with the Spell Burst effect. But if you are playing cheap spells, maybe Holy Smite Penance sort of stuff, you can also play this with, there's a neat combo. I can just open up Hearthstone. We look at Priest. Right now, Lazul's Scheme plus this card. You can steal your opponent's minion. Hog. No matter how big they are. Could be a combo that sees play. Lazul's Scheme doesn't have too much use, so I don't really see this combo happening, but you can try it out for sure. Seems okay, tech card maybe. Have to see how good the cheat spells are in Priest, basically. Next up, we've seen this one, Okay, here we are. Ceremonial Mole. Spell Burst, summon a student with taunt and stats equal to the spell's cost. So a 3 mana 2/2 weapon is competing against Anchor and Livewire Lance. Card's obviously worse than Anchor. It's Warrior Paladin, by the way. 4 mana spells you can play with this card. We go 4 mana type. Oh. Spell. 4 mana, look at Paladin, King's Conk, Equality Hammer. You don't really play any of these cards on turn off to play in the weapon, so I didn't see that working. 5 mana spells. Libram replaces the weapon. Doesn't seem very good in Paladin. Let's have a look at Warrior. Warrior has Brawl, Molten Breath. So could see play in Warrior in Control instead of Livewire Lance. You do the Brawl and then you get the 5/5 for the swing turn, right? So that's the only application of this card I see really. Okay. Next up, Totem Goliath. 5 mana 4/5 Death Rattle, summon all 4 basic totems, overload 2, and it's a totem itself. So this goes, I want to say straight into Totem Shaman. Although most of the time the game's sort of over. Either you've stuck your totem board and you're winning, or you haven't stuck a totem board and you've lost. This in terms of stats, 5 mana 4/5 Death Rattle, so you're summoning 3 O2s. There's spell damage there, there's healing totem, and you're getting a 1/1 as well. Decent amount of mana you're getting, and the spread wide board setting up for a Bloodlust, although it doesn't quite work. So you play this on turn 5, you only have 4 mana on turn 6, so you can't Bloodlust. But you could play any of the other totem buff cards, right? If your opponent ignores it, then you can copy it. If your opponent kills it, then you can copy the other totem, so it seems really annoying for your opponent to kill. This card seems pretty good. Does this bring Totem Shaman into the nutty playable category? I'm not so sure, but this card is very strong, I think, in terms of its stats. Like, are you too far behind by the time this comes down? I'm not even necessarily sure. This can just be a whole swing back in the game. It's just so, because it's a term itself. If your opponent ignores it, you just copy it. It just depends. If you're too far behind, it can be bad to play a 5 mana overload card, right? Your opponent just, I mean, it doesn't have Torn, right? So your opponent ignores it, goes face, you copy it, and then they still just keep on going face and you die. I can see that happening. But this deck does, I mean, that seems pretty good. Next up, Glide. Love to talk about this card. 4 mana Demon Hunter spell. Shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 4 cards. Outcast, your opponent does the same. So, let's start with the card without Outcast. Shuffle your hand into your deck. Okay. Draw 4 cards. So you're not going to want to do this. Like, remember plot twist of the card right now. If you have a 4 card or larger hand, this card's obviously awful. So you're gonna have a very low curve deck with this being like almost a top end card. You're gonna want to be shuffling a very small hand, probably one other card, so you can draw 3 for this card to be good. You need to like already have board. You probably would as Demon Hunter, otherwise you don't just want to draw without not having board. I mean, it's a pretty powerful draw tool. You do already have Skull, which is 6 mana, draw 3, and they're discounted. So if you're just using this for the draw effect, then it's pretty comparable to Skull. Probably drawing 3 cards. This is 2 cost less, but Skull reduces. So, pretty similar card in that sense, maybe even worse than Skull. But the Outcast effect, your opponent does the same. Now this is where it can be a huge disruption tool. You can play this in aggressive decks or in control decks to disrupt your opponent's hand. If their hand is anything larger than 4, you're just removing cards from their hand, which is pretty good. Although, you have to remember, if you're playing as a deck and you're playing aggro Demon Hunter, they're going to use all their cheap removal cards, and their hand is probably going to be left over with big cards, like their normal control win conditions. So if you shuffle their hand, even if you're shuffling 5 or 6 cards, you may then make their hand better because you're drawing them into the cards that they want that are in their deck, like the other cheap removal cards that are in their deck. So it could be a downside shuffling their hand, right? Very interesting card. Really not sure how good this card is, but it's going to be cool to play, and it's especially good if you want to disrupt whatever your opponent's planning on doing. If they have reduced cost cards, for instance, something spicy going in their hand, you can just go no thanks and swap it around, right? Definitely excited to see this card. Next up, Philosophy, Warlock and Demon Hunter dual class. Probably the lowest cost demon in your hand. Outcast give both +1/+1. Okay. So probably the lowest cost demon in your hand. Could be an expensive demon, could be a cheap demon. You probably don't want to play this in an aggro deck with cheap demons. Like, it's just too slow. Giving them +1/+1 isn't particularly amazing unless you're doing it on card which copies itself. What was that? There was the Splitting Imp, which copied itself. Is that card still in the game? I don't think so. I'm just searching in my collection right now. Yeah, it's not in the game anymore. Could use this in maybe like some sort of Q block deck where you copy a big demon. Don't really see this card being used in really anything at the moment. It's a coolish card. I mean, it works. It has the flavor of both sets with demon, right? But don't really see this card being very good unless you're doing something broken with copying a certain broken demon card. Next up, Playmaker. 3 mana 4/3. After you play a rush minion, summon a copy with 1 health remaining. So this is a warrior card. Let's just type in rush into my collection and have a look at warrior quickly. There is what? Restless Mummy, Argath. Those are pretty good with this card. There's also the new 5 mana card, which 5 mana 4/4 rush, and that upgrades a weapon when it attacks. So you get 2 of them. Pretty strong. That's the wrong screen. If you're playing all those rush cards, this could be a pretty decent tool with them. Of course, the 3-drop is pretty terrible. But maybe in control, it's a bit comparable to Bloodstorm Mercenary. You can play this card even with the 7-drop 5/8 if there's enough damage minions on board. Could see some application in control. Copying Kargath and getting multiple of the Prime seems pretty powerful, and with Restless Mummy seems pretty good too. Not so sure though, the stat line is a little weak. Next up is Archwitch Willow. 9 mana 7/7. Summon a random demon from your hand and deck. Okay, so this is a 9 mana card in Warlock. It's a legendary. The demon that you summon from your hand and deck is going to have an effect. So if I type in demon right now and we look at Warlock, let me have a look. This demon's going to have to be big. It's going to have Taunt or Rush. So Matron, Belguard have Taunt or Rush. Roodsmith has Taunt. Oh, Enhanced Dreadlord. That's a pretty good demon. Although putting it in your deck is tough work. Summoning that from your hand is pretty good. Lord Jaraxxus is a lot of stats, but it does not do anything. Same with these cards, not doing anything. Neutrals. These cards aren't doing much. So I'm really looking at like Taunt or Rush, which is why 5/5 Rush, Dreadlord, Siegebreaker. But it's tough to find these, put these cards in a deck right now. So I mean, it has some potential, some broken stuff. Obviously, Voidlord would be a premium card for this to go with. But I'm not really seeing it right now. The 9-cost going working with anything, so skip for now. Next up, Pen Flinger. 1 mana, 1/1, deal 1 damage, so Elven Archer. Spell Burst. Return this card to your hand. Okay, so this is kind of like infinitely going to go back into your hand. If you can get this card to cost 0 permanently, you win the game. Don't know how you do that though. The card's cool, bouncing it back, but I don't see this having any application. I mean, often removing your minion from the board is going to be a bad thing, so I'm not quite sure about this one. Yep. Next up. Oh, here's the minion I was talking about earlier. The new green skin card. 5 mana, 4/4 Rush. Whenever this attacks, give you +1/+1. Warrior Rogue. This is another dual class card. Right now, Rogue doesn't have any weapons to buff. Really, you don't want to replace with Waggle Pick. Hook Scimitar is hard to combo. It's a bit annoying. Not a great card. The General Dagger isn't great to give +1/+1 to. So I don't see this really being that effective in Rogue. In Warrior, however, since you have Corsair Cash, it's very likely you have a weapon equipped. Giving +1/+1 to a 2/2 weapon is already a lot better, as we saw from Corsair Cash. So basically, you just put this in your deck when you would put Greenskin, unless you were specifically tutoring a pirate. I mean, yeah, there was Raiding Party, right? Remember Raiding Party Rogue, where that would pull the Greenskin and the Greenskin would buff the Waggle Pick. That was a thing. So if there is the opportunity to buff the weapon, maybe in Rogue, you have to have it on a high attack weapon though. This needs to be high attack weapons. Sometimes it doesn't attack, which is the downside of it against Greenskin, right? If the opponent has an empty board. But normally your opponent develops a minion on their turn, so you're very likely you can rush with this. So in that sense, it just seems like a better Greenskin. So yeah, I mean, works on 2 weapon classes. Just a better Greenskin when you would play Greenskin a lot of the time, which is not very often. Star Student Selena, 4 mana, 4/3. Outcast, look at 3 cards in your opponent's hand, shuffle 1 of them into your deck. So shuffling cards into your opponent's deck is something we're going to get to later, but that could be a useful effect. Because when you shuffle into your opponent's deck, it completely reorders their deck. But on the surface, it's a 4 mana, 4/3, which is pretty bad. Pretty terrible stat, pretty unplayable stat line. So it's going to have to be Outcast, which is going to be tough because you're not going to put it in an aggro deck. This is a disruption card. Look at 2 cards in your opponent's hand, remove 1 of them. So that's pretty powerful. Removing 1 of the cards in your opponent's hand. If this, but getting this Outcast, I think in a slower deck, it's going to be tough because you're going to be playing expensive cards like Skull and stuff, and it's going to get stuck in the middle. But I'm thinking it's too tough. It's too often not going to be Outcast, which means its effect it just isn't worth it. But it's a cool card. I like the effect. Next up, we have Mage Hunter. It is not a Mage Hunter card. It is a Demon Hunter card, and it actually doesn't hunt mages. It hunts Edwin. 3 mana, 2/3. Whenever it attacks a minion, silence it. So we'll silence the minion before attacking. So obviously it kills an Edwin. Pog. It's a bit like, I mean, what do we kind of have? Iron Big Owl, 3 mana, 2/1 silence. Just a better card than that. You have Consume Magic already in Demon Hunter, which is 1 mana. I mean, it's just a tech card, right? If your opponents are playing cards like an egg, you can trade into that sort of stuff. If there's a lot of death threat or 2-drops around, you play this. You're probably not going to see this card very often at all, since it's not very effective if your opponent doesn't have anything worth silencing. But it's a pretty decent card. I like it. Next up is Lore Keeper Polecat. So this card is, let's just read it. Battlecry, reorder your deck from highest cost card to lowest cost card. Holy macaroni. So the number of things you can do with this card is actually insane. I was thinking about all the stuff. I wrote stuff on my Twitter, and I can go through all the stuff now, just looking at current decks that are being played. So let me just open up HS Replay and just look at current meta decks. Let's have a look. Legend Top 1000. What's going on? So Egg Warrior, Bomb Warrior. Already in Bomb Warrior, what this card can do is it can put the Boom on the top of your deck, which is the best card to draw in the deck. Blastmaster Boom. That seems pretty good. Also, Deathwing, a decent removal card. Next up, we have Highlander Hunter. That can put Dynatome and Brown on top of your deck if you want to curve out there. Also, if you think about the curve, play this card on turn 4. Turn 5, you draw a 5-drop. Turn 5, you draw Brand. Turn 6, you draw a 6-drop, which is Varanus, right? That seems pretty effective, drawing your 6-drop on curve. We have Zoo. Doesn't seem very effective in Zoo. Although you can guarantee draw Hand of Gul'dan into the 5/5 rush, and then you discard the Hand of Gul'dan. That doesn't seem bad at all. West Warlock. Let's put Malygos and Alex Charles on top of the deck and then guarantee hero power into them. That seems pretty nuts. Gallicond Rogue. Put Gallicond on top of your deck, and then it draws Kronks. That seems pretty effective. Gallicond Warlock. Doing the same thing with the 9-mana dragons, although not so good here. You can just have Gallicond on top of your deck, maybe. Dragon Hunter, don't see much there. There is other stuff going on. Not a pattern there. In Demon Hunter, you can put Skull on top of your deck, so it's Outcast, and you can have it so your deck, in an aggro deck, can go like Skull into Altruist. So you play this on turn 4. Right, maybe you'll draw and play this on turn 5, then you draw Skull, you play Skull, Skull draws Skull, and an Altruist. Altruist costs 1, you play the second Skull with the Altruist, you blah 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 blah. Yeah, next up, what do we have? Highlander Mage, Amazing Reno. Don't see that much application there. You could play it in Wild with Luna's Pocket Galaxy, that would be pretty silly. Druid, all of your Dragon Pulse on top of your deck. You can put your Sarah on top of your deck, which is the best card to draw. And if you've already drawn your Sarah and played it, you get all the Dragon Pulse on top. You draw all the pulls. If you haven't played your Sarah yet, you can put that on top of your deck, maybe. Seems pretty nice. Yeah, there's just so many applications of this card. It is pretty crazy. That's before we've even seen what cards are coming out this set. And that's just in current decks. Think of the decks you could even make with this card, with all the stuff going on in the game. Crazy powerful late game stuff. Oof. This card seems very, very, very strong. You can play this in just most decks. It doesn't even seem like you need to build your deck too much around this. As long as your top end of your deck is the best cards, which it often is, the card just seems good. Whoa. Next up, Sphere of Sapience. At the start of your turn, look at your top card. You can put it on the bottom and lose 1 draw ability. So this is Scry if you've played like Magic, other card games. Start of your turn, look at your top card, you can put it on the bottom of your deck. Okay, so he has like 4 charges of doing this. Like, it's a pretty... Like, the thing about Hearthstone compared to other games is, I don't know. Like, in Magic, there's lands, and there's a lot more value to get a card than a land sometimes, or a land than a card. Like, it depends on how the game's going, right? In Hearthstone, if your opponent has a 1-drop and then you play this, you start getting punched by the 1-drop. There's a lot of you need to contest board, and this doesn't do that. Also, how long is the average Hearthstone game? Like 8 or 9 turns. So you draw this later in the game. It's complete. Imagine top decking this. It's completely dead, not doing anything. Obviously, Twig and Wild is something which everyone's thought about already, but we'll talk about standard. I mean, the card's cool. Obviously, its effect is great. It's a neutral weapon, which is completely new to the game. But I don't see this being very effective. Of course, in Highlander decks, you want it close to your Highlander cards. But I just think it isn't worth the card, unless you could somehow always get this on turn 1, which isn't going to happen. Even then on turn 1, like, getting slightly better cards, your opponent is already ahead. Like, I don't see it working that well. But yeah, cool card, love it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, so a couple of other cards which weren't really... which haven't been released yet, but we're showing like some leak image. Wandmaker. Add a 1-cost spell from your class to your hand. 2 mana, 2/2. Seems okay. Neutral filler. Might play this in a deck where I need cards from other classes. Oh no, not cards from other classes. It's cards from like Quest Mage, where I need to create a card with the Mana Giant stuff. Now we have Secret Passage. Replace your hand with 5 cards from your deck. Swap back next turn. Holy Lord. Rogue 1 mana spell. Let's just say like you have like 2 cards, and this costs 1, so you can even dump the other card in your hand. If you're playing an aggro rogue deck which curves out at like, say, the new Lillian card, 4 mana, maybe you can dump your hand quite fast. This is just 1 mana, draw 5. You can play this twice. You can play like preps in your deck as well, just to dump your hand. Really easy to dump your rogue hand if you wanted to, and then you just jam this, draw 5 cheap cards, play them. It can just be 1 mana, draw 5. This card seems absolutely bonkers. Obviously, it's not that effective if you've got lots of cards in your hand. It's just like plot twist, basically, then. It's kind of bad that because you can play the cards you draw, and it only costs 1, so you're going to be playing a bunch of cards you draw. Even if you look at like Galacon Rogue, you could put this in, and on 8 mana you play this to get a chance of hitting Galacon. Getting Galacon is so powerful. Just seems insane. Absolute nuts in any. I mean, this is like card just might make aggro rogue. Seems bonkers. I don't know, guys. What can you think of doing with these cards? If you have any hot takes yourself, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. I'll be doing another video on any more cards that come out soon. But for now, that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. I will see you later with some more cards. Bye for now.